Moving on to the next talk, would like to call upon the chairperson, Dr. Srihari Kulkarni, who is the consultant physician and diabetologist at Even Hospital, Bengaluru, and Kulkarni Specialty Center, Bengaluru. Welcome you on stage, doctor.
Thank you. Welcome all. At the outset, I would like to thank Dr. L. Srinivasmurthy for giving this opportunity. Now, I welcome the next speaker, Dr. Mayur Agarwal. He will be speaking on Diabetes Juggling Act, Balancing Multiple Health Benefits. He is MBBS Gold Medalist, MD Medicine, DM Endocrinology. He has done many research work and he has the Young Entrant of the Year Award in RSSDI, Diabetes India. And over to you, Doctor, for the...
Yeah, good evening, everyone. Thank you, Chairperson, for the introduction. And thank you. At the outset, I would like to thank the organizer for inviting me for this talk. This is really an interesting one. And thank you, everybody who is sparing their valuable time to listen to me. The talk given to me is Diabetes Juggling Act, Balancing Multiple Health Goals. So we know diabetes is not just about glycemia. It is not just number game that you make the sugars normal. It is much beyond that. And that is what we are going to talk today. So why juggling? Why the topic name? So it's like how many balls you can keep up in the air safely. So for diabetic patient, you need to control obviously the diabetes, that's glycemia. But along with that, you need to control blood pressure, lipids, weight, kidney, heart, adherence, hypoglycemia. And then you have to manage all those comorbidities, heart failure, muscle, obesity, and depression, all those things. So it's not that easy. And we'll talk about today, the flow would be the concept of this, evidence, practical algorithm, clinical scenarios, and if time permits, future direction. So learning objective would be diabetes is a multifactorial management. We'll talk about that. And we'll discuss the goals of HbA1c, weight, all those things. We'll discuss the guideline, current guideline of all those things, and then the trials, and then some of those things I'll stress upon, and then the take-home message. So why diabetes management is complex? Because it's not just glycemia what you're looking at. It's not just that, okay, make blood sugars fasting, say, lesser than 140, 130, depending on your patient or postprandial. It's not like that. So you need a drug which will have cardio protection, renal protection, weight control, without hypoglycemia, without weight gain. You have good glycemic control, overall improve the quality of life. So the modern approach is about CKM, that's cardio, kidney, metabolic continuum management. Now, why this is really important? Because all these three have shared risk factors, shared pathophysiology, and they overall lead to mortality and morbidity. So if you see hypertension, diabetes, obesity, they thrive on a common soil. And this leads to atherosclerosis, MI, heart failure, all those macrovascular complications, ultimately leading to end-stage disease and organ damage. So end-stage diseases, you are like end-stage heart disease, renal disease, vascular death. So if you don't hit hard early, probably you would be losing, right? So patient will have poor quality of life, and overall when the patient develops complication, treatment of those complications would be even more costlier. So if you see, it's like a vicious cycle where one increases the other. The cardiovascular disease increases the kidney damage, vice versa. If somebody is having microalbuminuria, the risk of him getting a cardiovascular event is much higher. Same way for metabolic dysfunction, everything is interrelated, right? So all those three increases each other. And we have to think not only from the view of glycemic control, obviously that is important, but we need a patient-centric approach. We need a cardio-renal centric approach. We need to tackle the pathophysiological basis of diabetes. So this is the pathophysiology of this CKM syndrome. It's chronic inflammation where you have endothelial dysfunction, NO reduction, vascular stiffness. Obesity leads to insulin resistance, which leads to hyperglycemia, AGE, oxidative stress, microvascular damage, fibrosis in the myocardium, diastolic dysfunction, heart failure, and then there is also neurohormonal activation, that is your RAS activation. So you need to counteract this pathophysiological basis. There's something called as ABCDE framework. That is, you have to control all those things. A stands for HbA1c, B, blood pressure, C, cholesterol, D, we need to give those drugs which will have organ protection. Now this goes beyond HbA1c control. Okay, let's say somebody is having a good glycemic control and HbA1c of 6.5 but having a heart failure, then you have to prescribe an SGLT2. Okay, so we need those drugs because this drug is now even prescribed for those patients who are non-diabetic for organ protection. So obviously somebody who is diabetic will require this medication despite having good glycemic control. So we need those drugs for organ protection. Exercise and eating would be obviously mandatory for any of those diabetes management. And I have included these three: F, G, H, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H. That is, F is fat. So now is the era of GLP-1. I'll not be talking much about this because the time does not permit that, and we have too many talks. And then glucose variability or the glycemic variability. Earlier we used to talk about just three things, that is your fasting, PP, HbA1c. And then came the era of this hypoglycemia. And now what we are talking about is glycemic variability on the CGM. That means how high your sugars are going, how low they are going. So that amplitude is also again very important because it increases the reactive oxygen species and it leads to your complication, micro and macrovascular complications. So we have all those data. And then hypoglycemia obviously is very important. So how many of you have actually heard about the legacy effect? Just to have your attention, kindly raise your hand. Kindly raise your hand. How many of you have heard about the legacy effect? So you would be surprised to know that, see, legacy effect does not stand only for diabetes. It's like earlier glucose control, harder you hit, early you hit, the longer term patient would be benefited. So this paper is from Dr. Kamlesh Kunti. So this legacy effect does not stand only for blood glucose. BP, lipid control is equally important. They also have legacy effect. Prolonged benefit of glucose, BP and lipid control in individual with cardiovascular disease, diabetes in primary prevention of cardiovascular disease by early risk factor control. Legacy benefit of multifactorial risk factor intervention on your kidney, cardiac and motility outcome is there. So we have lot of evidence, again not going into detail, but are we aggressive enough, especially in those who are newly diagnosed? So this is from China. Around 6,000 patients were prospectively studied. It's an observational study where those patients who were diabetic for recent onset, like within 6 months, they were included, and after 12 months of treatment, what they found that 70% had less than 7 HbA1c, 83 had good control of their BP, 50 had good control of their cholesterol, less than 70. But only if you combine all those things, because that is what I'm talking about, your ABC framework. A is your HbA1c, B is your blood pressure, C is cholesterol. So let us concentrate on first three of the ABC. So if you see all those three, only 30%, even initially when we are talking about legacy effect, that is again very important. And at the baseline who had less than HbA1c of less than 7, they performed better. Those who were obese performed worse. So that was the data from this. But we have gone good over time. So there is a good study. This, if you see, this is from your Switzerland, where 6,000, 7,000 patients were again studied. They were recruited in 2003 to 6, and then 3 yearsly they were followed, 2009, 12, 14, 18, like this. For 15 years they were followed up, and you would be surprised to know that the glycemia is improving because probably we are using better drugs now. So from 23%, which was there in year 2003, to this 21, it has increased to 33. Similarly, blood pressure improved, like target was achieved in 51 at the baseline, 63 at the 15 years, and similarly cholesterol from 29 to 56%. So yes, we are performing better. But doing this, is it going to help in the long run? Yes, we have data. This is from the Steno 2 trial. So here what they did, there was an intensive arm, there was a conventional arm. And then this was, the study was for 7.8 years. Now after this, they have followed for 21 years again. And after 21 years, what they found that those who were in intensive arm, in that follow-up, they had their cardiovascular free life by increase by 7.8 years. So yes, in the long run, this actually helps. So we need something which is like a holistic approach, which will help in the metabolic parameter, obviously, in the renal and cardiovascular parameter as well. So basic would be lifestyle management, your diet, exercise, smoking cessation, all those things. Beyond that would be the lipid management, glycemic management, BP management, and your weight reduction. And that would be your medication, especially your SGLT2 inhibitor, GLP-1RA, RAS, and your non-steroidal MRA, which is your Finderon, which is one of the talk. So again, I will not be covering that. So the basic of any diabetes management is obviously chronic hyperglycemia would be the first thing, but beyond that you require SGLT2, GLP-1 to combat your macrovascular this complication, and then antiplatelet, anti-VEGF if the patient have retinopathy, all those macular edema, neuropathy, all those things. Management would be there, lipid management, mainly statin. So let us talk about the guideline. What the guideline says, how to treat these patients. Guideline says that the treatment should be individualized. It will depend on the age, comorbidity, hypoglycemia risk, and life expectancy. You go more stringent if the duration is shorter. You go less stringent if, say, patient is more complication, higher chance of hypoglycemia, lesser life expectancy, only elderly 70 years. You don't target your HbA1c to 6.5. Reason being, any hypo can be life-threatening, can cause MI, can lead to AF. So you are not doing good, right? So this depends on the age, comorbidity, hypoglycemia risk, and life expectancy of the patient. Vice versa, somebody 40 years without complication, you go very stringent. Even you can go up to 6 without hypoglycemia. 6.5 is what you should be targeting, obviously without hypoglycemia. So this is from your latest ADA, this diagram I have taken. Similarly, there is something called frailty assessment, because age is just a number. Somebody at 60 can have more comorbidities, whereas somebody at 80 can be fit. So there's something called as frailty assessment. Very fit, well, managing well is grade 1 to 3. This is not from ADA, this is from Diabetes Canada. So here they have divided into 9. Somebody who is terminally ill, let's say cancer, life expectancy of less than 1 month, you don't target any HbA1c. Only aim is that patient should not have hypo, patient should not go into HHS. That's it. No targets. So this depends on the functional dependency. What is the frailty index? Depending on that, there are HbA1c target, that how low you can go. So somebody who is even 70 with a frailty index of 1 to 3, you can go HbA1c even up to 7, and you keep your pre and post meal target as a simple normal individual, let's say 40 years. So again, age is just a number. This is again from the ADA guideline for the MESED. Depending on the fibrosis, whether F0, F1 or F2, F3, beyond F3 you will not prescribe other medication like resmetirom. F0, F1 does not indicate, only F2, F3 is where you give resmetirom. And then GLP-1RA or the dual agonist, all those are indicated because these patients are usually obese, right? And then this have data, including your AMPA also have data, SGLT2 also have some data that decreases. And then again, pioglitazone is to be given for F0, F1, F2, F3. Should not be given in F4 or decompensated cirrhosis. That is what is indication. So this is again from ADA. Now let's talk about hypertension. So the guideline clearly recommends, if the blood pressure is more than 150/90, you have to prescribe with 2 drugs. If lesser than that, you have to start with 1 drug. If the patient is having microalbuminuria, ACE or ARB is what you should be giving. Again, if the blood pressure is not controlled, you have to add another medication, right? This cutoff keeps on changing. This is from the latest 130/80. Earlier, last year, it was like 130/90. 2 years back, it was 140/90. But these are the recent guidelines which I am quoting, okay? Similarly, for statin, when we talk about statin, for secondary prevention, that means somebody already having an MI, it's a clear indication you have to give. I am talking here for primary prevention. Those patients who did not develop any cardiovascular event. Okay, for them 20 to 40 year, you have to give them if they have high risk, and 40 to 75, you have to use moderate intensity without risk factors also. Okay. And then if you're not reaching the target of LDL less than 70, especially in those patients who have risk, you have to add another drug. You have to intensify your therapy even after high intensity statin if you're not able to achieve an LDL of 70. Again, this is very, very important to understand. Reason being, the normal value which is given in your lab, which the patient refers, is usually 100 to something like that. So It's not 100 for diabetic with a high risk. It is 70, lesser than 70. In fact, somebody who is already having an MI event, this is for primary prevention. For secondary prevention, it should be lesser than 55. Okay? So, वहाँ का normal नहीं है. You have to understand this. And then beyond 75, it is you have to give if the patient is having high risk. You have to continue if the patient is already on, but you have to consider initiating depending on benefit risk if the patient does not have risk factor. Now, this is about the CKD. You obviously healthy eating, physical activity, smoking and weight, all those are important. Beyond that, RAS therapy is important. And then your SGLT2 inhibitor. Now, SGLT2 can be initiated AMPA up to EGFR of 20, DAPA up to EGFR of 25. Okay. And then still not controlled, GLP-1 not, then your non-steroidal MRA, that is your Finerenone, but that is only for type 2 diabetes, that is not for type 1 diabetes, okay? So again, that's difference. Now this is about the ADA guideline. We are running late, I'll be very quick in few slides. So you can see here, earlier it was lifestyle modification followed by metformin. Now metformin is put lower down. ऐसा नहीं है हर diabetic मरीज को metformin लिखना है. It is not like that. I'll just take 2 minutes, that's it. So this is lifestyle modification followed by assessment of ASCVD if the patient is already having an event or high risk. High risk, that means age more than 55, microalbuminuria positive, obesity, an Asian individual, a smoker, dyslipidemia, microalbuminuria positive. This mandates that your patient should be either on a GLP-1 or an SGLT2 inhibitor, irrespective of your HbA1c control. If there is heart failure, the patient should be on an SGLT2 inhibitor. Again, if the patient is having microalbuminuria or have a decline in EGFR, again, irrespective of your HbA1c, the patient should be on an SGLT2 inhibitor. Weight management, again, is very important. For those drugs like semaglutide, tirzepatide, you have very high efficacy. Now here, very important thing, metformin is put lower down. In fact, for weight management, you can see, I'll just enlarge, it is like metformin and DPP-4 are weight neutral. You can see here. It is now weight neutral. So just discussing 2 slides, I'll be discussing SGLT2 inhibitor. These are like they act on the S1 segment of the nephron, blocks 90% of your glucose, decreases HbA1c of somewhere 0.5 to 1%. Your throws glucose urea and reduces calories by 200 to 300 calories, weight loss of some 4 kgs, BP loss of some 3 to 5, and they restore the tubuloglomeralular feedback. The afferent arteriole vasoconstriction is there. That is why the EGFR slightly dips initially, but this reduces the intraglomerular pressure. Later on, this improves the EGFR in the long run. And this is about your Dicletimi, EMPA-REG, CANVAS outcome, CVOT trials, which showed that your MACE was decreased. Dicletimi did not show it. Cardiovascular death, EMPA-REG outcome showed there was significant difference. For hospitalization to heart failure, all those were significantly different. And then you have the trials for heart failure, DAPA-HF for reduced and EMPEROR reduced for reduced ejection fraction, EMPEROR preserved for your preserved ejection fraction, and DELIVER trial. So again, I'm not going to data, we are running late. And then for the kidney outcome, whether you talk about the EMPA-REG, CANVAS, VERTIS, Dicletimi, that showed significantly different. And then here are the trials. Whether diabetic, non-diabetic, we have dedicated trial for the renal outcome, which showed improvement. This is overall, you can take a picture of this. So 3-point MACE was significantly different in your AMPA-CANA, but not in dapagliflozin, because your primary prevention group was around 60%, whereas in EMPA-REG, 99% were secondary prevention group. That is why this difference was there. CV death only with ampagliflozin, CV death with heart failure, hospitalization to heart failure significant in everything. All cause death was significant only in EMPA-REG. And then CKD progression I have already shown. Now just this last slide, we are talking about GLP-1. Both are very good drug. You can see in terms of MACE, both perform good. CV mortality, myocardial infarction, total mortality, almost both are equal. In terms of stroke, SGLT2 are non-inferior, non-significant difference, whereas GLP showed significant difference, positive effect, whereas hospitalization to heart failure, SGLT2 overscores your GLP-1 RA. Okay? So in summary, diabetes is a multi-target disease requiring integrated management. Patient-centric approach is what is required. Treatment is guided by the comorbidities, preferences, and affordability. So make sure you keep all the balls in the air safely. That's a juggling act for diabetes management. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Mayur Agarwal. I should congratulate you. It was a wide topic, covered in 20 minutes. You covered all the topics, including the targets, treatment of diabetes, hypertension, CKD, lipid guidelines. Not only the guidelines, plus all the treatment guidelines. Hats off to you. Many congratulations. I think he needs claps. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Request the chairperson and speakers to move on to the selfie booth.